What would medieval Christmas actually look like if you showed up at a noble's hall in December? No Christmas tree, no presents under it, no eggnog, but you would find yourself in a 12-day festival where society had completely different rules. Lower clergy dressed as bishops. Gambling became legal. Young men in goatskin masks rushed into homes demanding food. So how did this actually work? What was the point of all this quote-unquote chaos? Chapter 1. The Commonalities. Across medieval Europe, Christmas operated by one shared template. That template was liturgical. The foundation was Advent. For weeks, meat and dairy vanished from the diet. After 4 to 6 weeks of eating only fish and vegetables, December 25th meant the body would suddenly receive protein in shocking quantities. By 350 AD, Pope Julius I declared December 25th as the Western Christmas date. By the medieval period, December 25th through January 6th was called Twelvetide, and it was locked into the Christian calendar. Each day within those 12 had specific meaning. December 26th was Saint Stephen. December 27th honored Saint John the Evangelist. December 28th brought the Feast of the Holy Innocents. And here's something unique about the liturgy itself. Priests were permitted to celebrate 3 masses on Christmas Day, and only on Christmas Day. The Angels' Mass happened at midnight in darkness and candlelight. The Shepherd's Mass occurred at dawn. The King's Mass took place in full daylight. 3 separate ceremonies, each addressing a different theological dimension of the Incarnation. Now let's talk about feasting, because this was actually a contractual obligation. A shepherd in a Somerset manor received bread and meat on Christmas Eve as a written contract. 3 other tenants on the same estate received 2 shared loaves, beef mixed with bacon and mustard, 1 chicken, cheese, fuel for cooking, and unlimited beer. The scale changed based on status, but the principle remained universal across Europe. Christmas meant access to protein that ordinary people would never encounter otherwise. And it was also a moment of generosity for those who had surplus. And here's something that might surprise some people. Gifts were actually exchanged on New Year's Day, not on December 25th. Henry III purchased 307 rings for distribution on January 1st. In 1242, he presented Beatrice of Savoy with an eagle set with precious stones that cost £100, an astronomical sum for the time. Chapter 2. The Regional Variations. Let's start with England, which built Christmas around spectacle and theatrical invasion. The centerpiece was the boar's head. It arrived in the Great Hall adorned with rosemary and bay, sometimes gilded, sometimes rigged to appear to breathe fire. Musicians sang the boar's head carol while servants carried it through the hall. Beyond the feast, mummers visited homes disguised in masks and animal skins. These were house-visiting traditions where disguise gave license to approach social superiors without protocol. The household had to feed them or shame fell on the family. France developed something entirely different. They created the Feast of Fools, centered on New Year's Day. Lower cathedral clergy took on the duties of higher-ranking priests and bishops. By 1445, French theologians recorded that priests may be seen wearing masks at the hours of office, dancing in the choir dressed as women, singing wanton songs, eating black puddings while mass is being said, playing at dice, running and leaping through the church. Now, scholar Max Harris argues that inside the actual church, there was no verifiable rowdiness, just second-hand accounts from distant authorities. But outside the church doors, that's where rowdiness became absolute. The Council of Basel banned the feast in 1435, though it continued into the 16th century. France also gave Europe the galette de roi, the king's cake, eaten at Epiphany. A bean was hidden inside, and whoever found it became the king for the day. Rome had done precisely this during Saturnalia. The Christian calendar had simply absorbed the pagan midwinter ritual and repackaged it. Spain practiced something called the Misa del Gallo, the Mass of the Rooster, held at midnight on Christmas Eve. Spanish nobility attended Mass in the dead of night, subjecting themselves to inconvenience and darkness. December 28 brought Dia de los Santos Inocentes, Holy Innocents' Day, which functioned as an organized prank festival. Medieval records document monks locking abbots in chambers and demanding ransom paid in food and drink. Italy took a completely different path. Instead of hierarchical inversion, Italy developed devotional visualization. Saint Francis of Assisi created the first recorded nativity scene in December 1223 in a cave at Greccio. He placed a real ox, a donkey, and a manger filled with hay. His motivation was explicit. He wanted to translate abstract theology into something illiterate peasants could feel emotionally. Reference to presepi appeared in Rome by 1272. By the end of the Middle Ages, scenes had expanded to include Mary, Joseph, shepherds, musicians, with entire rooms devoted to elaborate settings. Italy developed a theological approach moving toward intimate visual narrative, toward devotion through sight, rather than participation in controlled chaos. The Low Countries developed Sinterklaas, centered on St. Nicholas's feast day in early December. The saint checked on children, rewarding good behavior with gifts. Records document the shoe tradition by the late medieval period, where people left shoes by the hearth for coins and gifts. This represented anonymous charity, a framework radically different than the misrule traditions of France and England. Germany created the Paradise Play. On December 24th, churches performed theatrical scenes of the fall of man, with an evergreen called the Paradise Tree hung with red apples and wafers. This was the direct medieval precursor to the Christmas tree, deriving from Christian theatrical practice rather than pagan tradition. Germany also produced Christmas markets, originally meat markets where citizens stocked provisions. The Striezelmarkt in Dresden dates to 1434. These evolved into festivals selling toys, baskets, and Lebkuchen, honey spice cakes invented by Franconian monks in the 13th century. Now, before we move on, if you're enjoying this video so far, don't forget to like and subscribe to support the channel. Chapter 3: Evolution across the Middle Ages. The Middle Ages spanned 1,000 years. Christmas transformed continuously within that span, and understanding how reveals how medieval society itself changed. The early medieval period, roughly 400 to 1000 AD, focused on ecclesiastical observance. Saint Boniface complained in 742 about Germanic peoples engaging in singing and dancing in pagan style, heathen acclamations, and sacrilegious songs during the winter festivals. The church complained, but gradually tolerated what it couldn't suppress. Pagan practices were therefore absorbed rather than eliminated. By the 11th and 12th centuries, Christmas expanded into theatrical territory. Mystery plays appeared in churches dramatizing the Nativity. The Presepi tradition appears formally in written records in 1272 in Rome. The period shows a transition from purely liturgical celebration towards a mixture of liturgy and theatrical narrative. The 13th through 15th century saw the full elaboration of medieval Christmas. Household accounts contain specific details absent from earlier periods. Feasting accelerated and became competitive between noble houses. The boar's head appears regularly in records. By the 15th century, mystery plays had exploded into sophisticated productions. The Shepherd's Play from Wakefield turned 11 verses of Luke into 50 pages of performance, blending sacred storytelling with popular entertainment and crude comedy. Medieval people used Christmas to explore humor and irreverence within a sacred framework. Multiple factors drove this elaboration. Population growth meant more resources for spectacle. Town development created public space for performers. Economic development meant more meat and grain availability. By the 15th century, European agriculture was productive enough that winter scarcity meant inconvenience rather than starvation. This freed Christmas to become elaborate and theatrical. Then, the structure kind of collapsed. Late medieval bishops attempted suppression. The Council of Basel banned the Feast of Fools in 1435, and by the early 16th century, the Reformation attacked Christmas as non-biblical excess. Medieval Christmas didn't decline through fatigue, it collapsed because it had become so elaborate, so clearly pagan in character, so chaotic that religious reformers could present it as a dangerous heresy. Chapter 4. Why this matters. Medieval Christmas reveals something fundamental about how societies function, particularly how they manage order and disorder. First, these were sophisticated solutions to real problems. A feudal hierarchy is rigid, brittle, and prone to breaking under pressure. Christmas provided pressure release, a sanctioned period where inversion occurred, where people could articulate grievances through play and ritual. Basically, by permitting controlled chaos, rulers prevented uncontrolled chaos. Second, medieval Christmas demonstrates that tradition is collaborative, constructed rather than inherited. Every element, from the boar's head to the paradise tree to the galette de roi, was invented at some point, often relatively recently. The Christmas tree emerged from the paradise play only in the late medieval period, deriving from Christian theatrical practice rather than pagan tradition. Traditions feel ancient because they're performed as ancient, not because they are. Understanding this reveals how meaning gets constructed in human society. Third, these practices reveal that medieval people understood their own time as transitional. They blended pagan practices with Christian theology deliberately and consciously. By the 15th century, that synthesis felt natural. Folk traditions were absorbed so thoroughly they seemed eternal. This flexibility, this willingness to absorb older practices rather than erase them, reveals a different approach to religious authority than what emerged much later. Finally, medieval Christmas matters because modern Christmas operates on an identical underlying structure. When we emphasize commercialism, family obligation, or religious meaning, we're emphasizing different elements of a structure that existed 700 years ago. Medieval Christmas required theatrical performance, communal participation, significant consumption, religious obligation, distinct rituals for different social classes, and created anxiety about proper performance. Modern Christmas carries all these elements, only the details have changed. Understanding medieval Christmas means understanding why societies need to permit the impossible. As always, thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. You can find my sources below, and see you in the next one.